My daughter-in-law's cell phone started ringing right in front of me, and when I looked at the screen, I froze. The incoming call was displaying a clear, recent-looking photo of my husband, even though he has been dead for years. And that single moment completely shattered everything I thought I knew about my family and the people I trusted. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, because when you stop doing this, YouTube understands that you don't like this content and stops recommending good stories like this. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. When I found the phone Rachel had forgotten in my house, I didn't think much of it at first. She had been there earlier helping Ethan with a school project, and people forget things all the time. I picked up the phone only to put it aside, but the screen lit up with a new notification. That was when I saw the picture of Harold. My heart stopped. It was him, standing there with that familiar half-smile I hadn't seen in 5 years, ever since the accident that took him from me. I stared at the image for several seconds, trying to understand how that photo even existed. I had never seen it before. His clothes were different from anything he owned, and the background looked like somewhere I didn't recognize. For a moment, I wondered if it was an old picture, something Rachel had somehow found. But that didn't make sense. Why would she have it saved on her phone? My hands shook as I held the device, and even though I felt wrong looking at something private, I couldn't pull away. I needed to know why a picture of my dead husband had appeared on Rachel's screen, as if it were completely normal. The phone vibrated again with another alert, and before I could convince myself to leave it alone, my thumb slid across the screen. The message preview mentioned Harold by name, and something inside me tightened. I knew I should stop. I knew I was crossing a line, but the confusion, fear, and strange sense of betrayal pushed me forward. I tapped the message. A conversation opened, and what I saw didn't feel real. The words hinted at meetings between Rachel and Harold, phrased casually, like they were discussing plans from just days ago. I read the lines again, unable to make sense of them. Rachel wrote as though Harold were alive, as though they were seeing each other without anyone knowing. My stomach twisted. I thought maybe it was a cruel joke or some misunderstanding, but the tone didn't match anything like that. Each message made me feel smaller, like the ground beneath my feet was turning soft and unreliable. I kept scrolling, unable to stop myself, hoping the next line would explain everything, but it only added more confusion. The guilt of digging through someone else's phone kept brushing against my thoughts, but it wasn't strong enough to pull me away. I was already in the middle of something I couldn't ignore. When the lock screen appeared again, asking for a password, I froze. Then I remembered Ethan telling Rachel once that he always used his own birthday for everything. I typed it in, unsure if I was making a terrible mistake or the only possible choice. The screen unlocked. A wave of panic and relief hit me at the same time. Now I had access to everything. I opened the messages again and went further back. I read earlier conversations that seemed even more personal, showing a closeness that made my chest hurt. Rachel wrote about missing Harold. She mentioned moments with him that didn't match any time before his death. She wrote like someone involved with him in ways I had no idea about. The thought that she had been hiding something from me all these years made my skin crawl. As I moved through the conversations, each message felt heavier. Some were short and casual, but others described meetings in places I didn't recognize. Rachel talked about nights they had spent together, moments of affection, and things Harold supposedly told her. The details felt so specific that it became harder to believe this was some strange mistake. I kept thinking back to the last years before Harold died, trying to remember anything unusual, any sign that he might have been keeping something from me, but nothing connected clearly. Still, the more I read, the more it seemed like Rachel and Harold had been sharing something behind my back. The words on the screen formed a version of my marriage that I had never seen, one that made me question every memory I had of our life together. My hands felt cold as I scrolled, and I kept glancing toward the door as though someone would walk in and catch me reading secrets I wasn't supposed to see. But I couldn't stop. I needed answers. I reached older messages, ones that made everything feel even worse. Rachel wrote about struggling with the secrecy, saying she wished things were simpler. She mentioned moments when she almost told me something, but lost courage. Those lines stung the most because she had been in my house so many times, eating at my table, talking with me like nothing was wrong. I felt foolish for trusting her so easily, for letting her become part of my routines without ever imagining she might be hiding something this big. My mind kept jumping between disbelief and anger. I didn't want to accept that Harold had cheated on me, especially with someone I knew. It felt like reopening a wound I thought had healed, only to discover it had never truly closed. I tried to remind myself that Harold was gone, and nothing I learned now could change the past, but knowing that didn't make the pain any easier. I scrolled to the very first messages between them. These were shorter, less emotional, almost like two people testing boundaries. They talked about meeting in places close to work or near familiar streets. There were hints of feelings growing between them, casual comments that slowly turned into something more intimate. Eventually, the messages became clearer, confirming that a romance had happened without me ever noticing. Seeing it written out, word after word, made everything inside me feel unsteady. I closed the phone for a moment, pressing it against my chest, trying to breathe. The room felt smaller, as if the walls were inching toward me. The betrayal, both from Harold and from Rachel, sat heavily in my stomach. Even though Harold had been gone for years, the discovery felt fresh, raw. When I finally opened the phone again, the last message I had read reminded me once more what I was facing. My world felt like it was falling apart as I realized my family had been carrying secrets I never imagined I would have to confront alone. When I continued exploring the phone, I told myself I would stop the moment things became too painful. But that promise didn't last more than a few seconds. I opened the photo gallery, and the first images I saw made my whole body tense. They were pictures of Harold and Rachel together, not in public places or somewhere unfamiliar, but inside my own house. I recognized the hallway wall, the rug near the living room door, and even the old couch I had kept for years. In one photo, Harold stood close to her, and they looked comfortable, as if being together like that was natural for them. I felt a wave of nausea, the kind that makes your stomach twist so hard it's hard to breathe. I kept staring because I needed to understand how deep this went. I clicked through the photos slowly, seeing moments that clearly happened while I was away. Days when I thought I was running errands or taking Ethan somewhere, not realizing what was happening behind my back. Each image made everything feel more real, and the betrayal hit me in a way that felt physical, like a sudden pressure inside my chest. Even so, I kept going, because I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. As I looked closer, I saw details that made the situation even worse. There were pictures taken in my bedroom, in the guest room, even near the old storage cabinet Harold used to call the cabin. I had always wondered why he was so protective of that place, insisting that I didn't need to clean or organize it. Now I understood. The messages I opened next talked about clothes hidden there, things they used to keep their meetings secret. Rachel mentioned slipping in while I was grocery shopping or picking up Ethan from school. She talked about how nervous she felt, but also how excited she was. Reading those words felt like being punched repeatedly. I scrolled further, finding messages where Harold reassured her, telling her I wouldn't suspect anything. That line made my stomach drop. It was bad enough knowing they were together, but reading how confident they were in my trust felt even worse. Some conversations mentioned specific days I remembered clearly, days when I had no idea what was really happening. I kept reading, even though every new piece of information added another layer of pain, because walking away without knowing everything felt impossible. Eventually, I began to notice something strange. The messages didn't stop after Harold died. I found conversations dated months and even years after his passing. At first, I thought the phone was glitching, or that I was misreading the dates, but the more I looked, the more unsettling it became. Rachel mentioned someone called T. She wrote to him the same way she used to write to Harold, using the same phrases, sometimes even referencing things only Harold would know. It was as if T had stepped into Harold's place, continuing whatever relationship they had started. In one message, Rachel said she hated pretending Harold was gone when she still felt him close through T. I didn't know what that meant, and the confusion mixed with fear. My hands shook as I held the phone, unsure if I was misunderstanding something or discovering something far darker than I ever imagined. I reread the messages twice, searching for clues about who T was, but nothing made sense. The feeling that everything was spiraling into something much bigger than an affair started to grow inside me, pushing me to keep reading no matter how scared I felt. I was still scrolling when I heard the knock on the door. It was gentle at first, then a little louder, followed by Rachel's voice calling my name. My heart started racing immediately. She had returned for her phone. I quickly locked the screen and slipped the device under a stack of magazines on the table. I forced myself to breathe normally as I opened the door. Rachel smiled nervously and asked if she had left her phone behind. I kept my expression calm and acted confused for a moment, then pretended to search around the room as if I had no idea where it could be. The whole time my hands felt cold, and I worried she would somehow notice something was off. She stood close to me, watching my movements, and I felt like the phone under the magazines was burning a hole through the table. I finally handed it back to her with a casual gesture, pretending I had just found it. She thanked me, apologized for the inconvenience, and left quickly. I watched her walk to her car, trying to keep my breathing steady. I didn't let myself relax until I heard her engine start and fade into the distance. As soon as she was gone, the quiet house felt heavy. I walked to the table, lifted the magazines, and pulled the phone out again. My hands were still shaking, but I needed to keep going. I sat down and reopened the messages, reading each one more carefully than before. The references to tea became more frequent the farther I scrolled. Rachel wrote about meetings in the same places she used to meet Harold, using phrases that made it sound like nothing had changed except the person filling his role. There were lines about how she missed the secrecy, how she wished things could return to the way they were before everything became complicated. I felt sick, wondering what that meant. I opened the photo gallery again and found newer images. None showed a face, but some angles and backgrounds were far too familiar. It felt like I was being pulled deeper into a story filled with pieces that didn't fit together yet. But I couldn't stop. Every new detail made me realize that what I thought was a simple betrayal was turning into something much larger and much stranger. By the time I reached the end of the messages, my whole body felt tense and exhausted. I sat there, trying to understand everything I had seen. The affair alone would have been enough to break me, but the continuation of it, the presence of tea and the confusing references that made no sense, turned everything into a puzzle that felt impossible to ignore. I thought back to all the years after Harold's death, all the days when Rachel acted normal around me, all the times she offered help or comfort like she had nothing to hide. Now, every interaction felt tainted, as if there had always been something underneath her words that I never noticed. I realized that whatever was going on wasn't just about cheating or lies. It was something deeper, something that seemed to stretch across time in a way that didn't feel natural. Sitting there with the phone in my hands, I understood that this story wasn't finished. I was only at the beginning, and as painful as it was, I knew I had to keep digging. The moment I reached that final message, I felt a cold certainty settle inside me. This went far beyond a simple domestic betrayal. When Michael arrived later that day, I noticed right away that something was wrong. He wasn't just upset. He looked shaken, like he had spent hours trying to hold himself together and had finally reached the point where he couldn't do it anymore. He paced back and forth in my living room without even sitting down, rubbing his hands over his face and muttering that something felt off, that Rachel had been acting strange. I could tell he suspected something serious, but he wasn't sure what it was yet. Watching him like that made my chest tighten because I already knew the truth he was trying to figure out. I tried to stay calm, but the guilt of keeping the secret even for a short time made it hard to breathe. When he finally looked at me and asked if I had noticed anything unusual about Rachel, I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. My hands felt cold as I reached for the phone I had been keeping near me. I told him there was something he needed to see, and the moment I said it, he stopped pacing and stared at me. I could see fear and confusion in his eyes, and it made what I was about to do feel even heavier. I handed him the phone slowly, feeling my throat tighten. I explained that Rachel had forgotten it at my house and that I had stumbled onto things I hadn't expected to find. He didn't interrupt me, but I could tell he was preparing himself for something painful. When he unlocked the phone and opened the messages, his expression changed almost instantly. His face twisted with disbelief first, then shock, then something deeper that was hard to describe. He scrolled through the conversations with shaky hands, reading the parts where Rachel described meeting Harold, talking to him, being with him in ways a wife should never discuss with anyone else. I watched as he read the photos, the messages, the details that revealed everything. At one point, he looked up at me, his eyes red, and asked if it was real. I nodded because lying wouldn't help either of us. Then he kept reading, moving slower, as if each new sentence made it harder for him to breathe. Seeing him crumble like that broke something inside me too. It felt wrong, almost cruel, to watch someone I cared about learn that not only had his wife betrayed him, but she had also betrayed his own father. While he continued reading, I sat nearby, unable to do anything except be there. Every few minutes he wiped his eyes or shook his head, whispering things like, "I can't believe this," or "How did this happen?" He looked smaller somehow, like the truth had taken away a part of him he'd never get back. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't know if he wanted comfort or silence. What I did know was that he deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. Keeping that secret would have destroyed him even more. Still, watching him try to understand how his wife and father had hidden something so serious from him for years made my heart ache. I felt a mix of sadness and anger, mostly because none of this should have happened. No one should have been put in a position to face something like that. As he went back to the older messages, the ones that proved the affair had been going on long before Harold died, I saw something change in his expression, a mixture of betrayal and something close to grief. It reminded me of the feeling I had when I first discovered everything. That horrible realization that the past wasn't what you thought it was. Just when I thought the worst part was over, there was a loud knock at the door. It startled both of us. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the timing made my stomach drop. I went to answer it, and when I opened the door, 2 police officers were standing there. Their expressions were serious, and they asked if they could speak with me privately. I stepped aside and let them in, feeling a strange mix of confusion and dread. Michael put the phone down and looked at them, just as lost as I was. One of the officers explained that they had reopened the investigation into Harold's death. Hearing that made my heart skip. I asked why, and they said new information had come to their attention. Information suggesting that Harold's death might not have been an accident after all. Before I could even respond, the officer added something that made my body go cold. They said there were indications that I might have been involved. At first, I thought I had misheard them. I stared at them, stunned, waiting for them to correct themselves or explain further. But they didn't. They looked at me with the kind of suspicion that made everything suddenly feel dangerous. I tried to speak, but my voice barely came out. I told them I had nothing to do with Harold's death, that I had mourned him for years, that nothing they were implying made any sense. But they didn't leave. They kept asking questions, focusing on my movements during the days before and after the accident, details I barely remembered after so long. Their tone made it clear that they weren't just checking routine information. They genuinely believed I might be guilty of something. Michael stood beside me, defending me, telling them I had no reason to hurt Harold, but even he seemed overwhelmed by how quickly everything was changing. I felt trapped between the shock of the accusations and the fear of what this meant. If someone was trying to frame me, then everything I had found on Rachel's phone suddenly felt even more dangerous. It wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about someone building a path that led straight to me. When the officers finally left, the house felt different, heavier, like their presence had left a shadow behind. I stood in the middle of the room trying to process everything at once. The affair, the lies, Rachel's strange behavior, the messages about T, and now the police trying to connect me to Harold's death. Michael looked as lost as I felt, but he kept saying he knew I wasn't capable of something like that. Even so, I could see the fear in his eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of how big this situation had suddenly become. I picked up the phone again, scrolling through the messages with trembling hands, looking for anything I might have missed. The references to secret meetings, the hints about clothing hidden in the cabin, the conversations continuing long after Harold died. Everything pointed to something deeper, something planned. The realization settled in slowly but firmly. Someone wanted this to lead back to me. Someone wanted to twist the truth, bury the real story, and make me look guilty. Standing there with Michael beside me and the phone in my hand, the danger became clear. This was no longer just a painful discovery. It was a threat, and it was getting closer. When Detective Morrison began questioning me, I felt a tightness in my chest that made it hard to stay calm. She wasn't rude, but her tone was firm and precise, and it was clear she already had certain suspicions in mind. She started by asking about Harold's medication, the type he took, who managed it, and whether I had ever noticed anything unusual. I tried to answer honestly, but her questions brought back memories I had tried to bury for years. I remembered how, near the end, Harold's pills sometimes looked different. I didn't think much of it at the time because Rachel often helped me organize everything. She volunteered to assist whenever things got overwhelming, and I trusted her. I told the detective that back then, I wasn't paying close attention to every detail because I was focused on Harold's comfort and the stress of his condition. As I spoke, I could see Detective Morrison taking notes, analyzing every word. It made me uneasy, like she was trying to match my memories with something already written in her file. I could feel my hands shaking slightly, but I forced myself to stay composed because falling apart now would only make everything worse. She continued by asking me to describe the last few days before Harold died. I tried to remember everything as clearly as I could, when he last seemed well, when he started getting weaker, and how Rachel had been around almost daily, offering help. Saying it aloud made it sound suspicious, even though at the time I had felt grateful. I remembered one night in particular when Harold complained that the medication tasted odd, but I dismissed it because he was tired and emotional. Back then, I didn't think someone close to us could ever do something harmful. The detective listened carefully and then asked if I knew about Harold's life insurance policy. I froze for a moment because I didn't. I told her I had never heard of any policy besides the basic one from his work. She raised her eyebrows slightly and said there was another one, a substantial policy, taken out not long before Harold's death. Hearing that shook me. I didn't understand why Harold would hide something like that from me. But before I could even process it, she added that the police had received an anonymous report suggesting I had a financial motive tied to that insurance. I felt a cold rush go through me. Someone had accused me of planning Harold's death for money I didn't even know existed. I asked her who made the report, but she said it had been completely anonymous. That answer made me feel helpless because it meant anyone could have called, anyone who wanted to hurt me or shift attention away from themselves. Then she mentioned something even more disturbing. Recent findings in Harold's financial records showed unusual withdrawals and payments connected to the insurance money. The detective said the police were trying to trace those transactions, but for now, the evidence created uncomfortable questions. Hearing her say that made my stomach twist. I kept insisting I knew nothing about any of it, that I had never touched the account, but the detective simply nodded without giving any indication of whether she believed me. As she asked more questions, my thoughts started drifting to Rachel without me meaning to. Her frequent presence during Harold's illness, the times she handled his pills, the hidden messages on her phone, the secret relationship, the continuation of the affair even after Harold died through someone she called T. The pieces felt like they were slowly sliding into place, forming an image I never wanted to imagine. I began to wonder if Rachel had been manipulating everything from the beginning, not just the affair, but Harold's medication, the insurance, maybe even his death. The detective noticed my silence and asked what I was thinking. I hesitated, unsure whether accusing Rachel outright would make things worse, so I simply said that someone had been very close to Harold during that time and that maybe the police should look beyond me. She wrote something down without responding, which only added to my uncertainty. By the time the conversation ended, I felt drained, like every emotion had been pulled out of me at once. Detective Morrison thanked me for my cooperation, but her tone was neutral, unreadable. I walked out of the station with a pounding headache and a heavy feeling in my chest. As I made my way to the car, the details replayed in my mind. The strange pills, the insurance policy I never knew about, the anonymous report, the suspicious financial records. Each part pointed toward a setup, a plan that had been unfolding behind my back. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that none of this was a coincidence. Someone wanted the police to look at me instead of the real culprit. Someone who had access. Someone who could manipulate Harold's medication. Someone who had reasons I still didn't fully understand. Sitting in the car, I took a long breath and tried to steady myself. I knew I couldn't let fear take over. If I didn't fight back, whoever was behind all of this would succeed in destroying my life. I reminded myself that I had already found pieces of the truth hidden in Rachel's phone, and there was likely more to uncover. This wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about exposing the person who had been weaving lies around me for years. I started the engine with a new determination settling inside me. I didn't know how deep this went or what I would discover next, But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to let anyone frame me for Harold's death. I was going to find the truth, no matter how painful or dangerous it turned out to be. Michael and I followed Rachel from a distance, keeping far enough behind her car so she wouldn't notice us. We didn't speak much during the drive. Both of us were too focused and too tense to waste words. The messages from her phone had mentioned a cabin, the same one Harold used to call the cabin, and we knew that whatever she planned to do, there was important. When she finally parked near the old building, we stopped our car behind a line of trees and stayed low. The place looked abandoned from far away, but when we got closer, it became clear someone had been using it often. There were lights on inside, and shadows moved across the window. Michael and I walked quietly through the grass until we found a spot where we could see without being seen. Through one of the side windows, we spotted Rachel inside, laughing freely in a way neither of us had seen in a long time. A moment later, Tom joined her. Seeing them together, there made everything click into place. The tea from the messages, the secret meetings, all of it. My stomach tightened as we watched them pour drinks and act like nothing in the world could touch them. We stayed as close as we dared, pressing ourselves near the wall where the window was cracked open just enough for sound to escape. Inside, they talked loudly, almost celebrating. At first, their conversation seemed casual, but then Rachel mentioned my name, and both Michael and I froze. She laughed and said their plan was working better than expected, that the police were already focusing on me. Tom clinked his glass against hers and said something about everything finally paying off. Hearing that made my hands shake, and I looked at Michael, who stared straight ahead, jaw clenched tight. They kept talking, going over how careful they had been, how long they had waited for the right moment, and how no one would ever suspect them. As horrible as it felt to listen, neither of us dared move. It was the first time we had heard them speak so openly about what they had done. I took out my phone slowly and pressed record. Michael did the same. It felt risky, but we needed proof. Without it, everything we knew was just words and suspicion. We kept listening, leaning even closer when their voices dropped slightly. Rachel said something that made both of us stop breathing. She admitted they had poisoned Harold. She didn't say it casually. She explained exactly how they managed to do it, how she handled the pills, how Tom helped her get the right dosage without raising questions. Tom added that the insurance money would have changed everything sooner if Harold hadn't resisted the idea at first. Hearing them talk about Harold like he was just a problem they needed to get rid of made my stomach twist. They even joked about how long I had stayed clueless and how easy it had been to make me look guilty afterward. Michael pressed his hand against his mouth, his eyes filling with an anger so strong I worried he might burst through the door, but he didn't. He stayed focused because we needed every word they were saying. I kept recording, even though every second made my heart hurt more. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was cold and calculated. As we continued recording, they described how they had manipulated documents connected to Harold's insurance. Rachel bragged about how she had forged signatures and gotten paperwork approved without raising any suspicion. Tom explained how he'd created the anonymous report that blamed me. They talked about it like it was some brilliant strategy, like ruining my life was just another part of their victory. At one point, Rachel even said she couldn't wait for me to be questioned more aggressively by the police. Hearing that made my blood run cold. They had built this plan step by step, thinking through every detail, never once worrying about the damage they were causing. They believed they were untouchable. I held the phone tighter, terrified of dropping it or making noise, because this was more than just shocking. It was the proof we desperately needed. I could feel the cold night air on my skin, but it didn't compare to the chill that spread inside me as I realized how deep their cruelty went. The longer we listened, the more dangerous everything felt. The cabin was quiet except for their voices echoing inside, and every time one of them moved closer to the window, my heart jumped. I kept imagining them discovering us, stepping outside, and trapping us before we could get away. Michael whispered once, telling me to be careful, but that was the only thing he said. We both knew we couldn't stay much longer. The risk was growing with every passing minute, but leaving too soon meant we might miss something important. So we waited until their conversation shifted to more casual subjects, laughing, drinking, acting like monsters who believed they had succeeded. When there was finally a moment where neither of them mentioned Harold, the insurance, or me, I gently touched Michael's arm and nodded. We backed away slowly, careful not to snap a branch or crunch leaves beneath our feet. Once we reached the trees again, we allowed ourselves to breathe a little more freely. But the fear still lingered. The drive back was silent. Neither of us wanted to speak, afraid that putting anything into words would make the situation feel even heavier. I stared ahead the whole way, gripping my phone tightly, knowing the recording inside it was the only thing standing between me and a ruined life. Michael looked out the window, his face tense and unreadable, but I knew he was hurting deeply too. He had lost his father to their cruelty, and now he had discovered his wife was capable of something unthinkable. When we finally reached home, we both sat for a moment without getting out of the car. My hands were cold, and my body felt drained, but beneath all of that exhaustion was something else, a clear understanding. That recording was our weapon. It could expose everything they had done and finally turn the situation around, but it also meant they were more dangerous than ever. We stepped out of the car quietly and walked inside, knowing that from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. After that night at the cabin, everything inside me shifted. Michael and I woke the next morning knowing we couldn't ignore what we had heard. Their voices and their confession kept replaying in my mind, and the recording on my phone felt heavier than anything I had ever held. We sat at my kitchen table, both of us exhausted but determined. We needed to understand every piece of their plan, not just the part they bragged about. So we started digging through old documents, files I had saved after Harold's death but never fully examined. I opened folders I hadn't touched in years, spreading everything across the table. We compared dates, signatures, statements, and suddenly patterns began to appear. There were forms with Harold's name signed in a style that didn't match his real handwriting. There were pages authorizing changes to his insurance policy that I had never seen before. Every new detail confirmed how deep their betrayal went. And with each confirmation, I felt a painful mixture of anger and determination rising in me. This wasn't just about what they did to Harold anymore. It was about what they were still trying to do to me and everyone I cared about. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became that they had built a plan from the beginning. A plan meant to destroy anyone who got in their way. While we focused on the paperwork, something unexpected happened. I received a text message from an unknown number. The first one was a simple line saying I should stop digging. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it might be a mistake or a coincidence. But then another message came, and this one mentioned Ethan. It didn't say his name directly, but it described where he had been that afternoon and what shirt he was wearing when he left school. My entire body froze. That wasn't random. They were watching him. Fear shot through me, stronger than anything I had felt before. I showed the message to Michael, and he went pale, realizing how desperate Rachel and Tom must have become. They knew the investigation was turning against them. They knew we had seen too much, but instead of backing down, they were trying to intimidate us. That threat over Ethan changed everything. It made me understand that waiting or hesitating could give them time to do something even more dangerous. That was the moment when my fear turned into resolve. I wasn't going to let them scare me into silence. If anything, their desperation only proved that we were close to exposing the entire scheme they had built. Knowing how far they were willing to go made me rethink every step. I realized I couldn't trust just anyone with the information. The local police had already been manipulated once, and I wasn't going to give Rachel and Tom another chance to twist the truth. So I started gathering everything in a careful, methodical way. I printed copies of the forged insurance documents, organized screenshots of the messages from Rachel's phone, downloaded backups of the recordings, and stored everything in multiple places. I contacted a lawyer recommended by someone outside town, someone with no connection to anyone here. Michael helped me write down a timeline, including every detail we remembered, from Harold's last days to the moment we heard the confession in the cabin. We also reached out to a detective from another district, someone who had a reputation for not overlooking inconsistencies. Sharing the recording with her was terrifying, but when she listened to it, her expression changed instantly. She asked questions, real ones, important ones, and for the first time, I felt like someone believed us without hesitation. She warned us to stay alert because people who commit crimes like this often act unpredictably when cornered. With the detective's help, we moved forward more confidently. She began comparing our documents with official records and noticed discrepancies immediately. She confirmed that Harold's signature on the insurance form wasn't authentic. She also traced the anonymous report back to a device registered under a company connected to Tom. Every new verification made our case stronger. I kept expecting something terrible to happen. Another threat, someone watching the house, another false accusation. But nothing happened. It was almost as if Rachel and Tom sensed the walls closing in around them and didn't know which way to turn. Even so, I didn't let my guard down. I kept Ethan close, made sure he was never alone outside school, and told him a simple version of the truth, that some people were making bad decisions and we needed to be careful. He didn't understand everything, but he trusted me. Knowing I was protecting him gave me strength. And every night, Michael and I reviewed the evidence again and again, making sure nothing was missing. I could feel the end approaching, and with it came a strange mix of fear and hope. When the day finally arrived, it felt almost unreal. The detective arranged everything quietly, avoiding any leaks that might warn Rachel or Tom ahead of time. She gathered a team of officers who were fully briefed and prepared. Michael and I stayed at home, waiting for news, pacing back and forth as if time had slowed down. Then the phone rang. The detective told us they had been arrested, both of them, and that they had been caught completely off guard. Rachel had tried to talk her way out of it at first, pretending she was confused, but the recording shut down every lie. Tom grew aggressive when confronted with the forged documents and financial records, but even he couldn't escape the evidence. Hearing that they were officially in custody made my knees weaken. I sat down and felt a wave of emotion hit me at once: relief, grief, exhaustion, and something like emptiness. After everything they had done, after all the months and years of manipulation and lies, it was finally over. They couldn't hurt us anymore. They couldn't twist the truth or hide behind fake stories or threaten Ethan ever again. When I hung up the phone, Michael let out a breath he had been holding for days. He sat beside me, and for the first time in a long while, we didn't feel the weight of fear pressing on us. There was still pain, deep pain, from everything we had learned, everything we had lost. Harold would never come back. Michael still had to face the reality that his wife had betrayed him and killed his father. And I knew that my family, the one I thought I had, would never be whole again. But despite all of that, there was a sense of peace settling slowly between us. Justice had been served. The truth had come out. I had protected Ethan from becoming part of a nightmare, and I had stood beside Michael when everything fell apart. As we sat together in the quiet of the house, I realized that even though nothing would ever be exactly the same, we were still standing. And for the first time since all of this began, standing felt like enough. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.